The Dead Island virus was changed slightly throughout the different games, varying a little from what we saw in its first one, known as the HK pathogen. I want to talk a little about its history and the background of it, explaining everything we know about all this, putting together the information from both games. So stay in this video to learn more about the virus in this universe and its origins explained in depth. I also remind you quickly that if you like this content, you can leave a like and subscribe to support me. Now get comfortable and let's begin. In the first game, we could see how this HK pathogen spread rapidly on some paradisiacal islands, turning most tourists and inhabitants into hungry zombies. However, the media concealed everything, blaming a strong storm, downplaying the rumors about the true events. In this second part, and after a few years, now in Los Angeles, a new virus sprouted and spread again through all the streets. The government, in response to this, decided to isolate all of Los Angeles, preventing access and exit, with large walls around it. At the same time, several flights were launched evacuating certain people who could afford the ticket. They could not prevent the chaos, which occurred within the city, causing thousands of deaths. However, there is an important factor to consider. Immunity against the virus, which we can see present both in the protagonist, whichever we chose at the beginning of the game, and in Sam B, one of the characters from the first Dead Island, which appears again in this second part. This immunity provides the host with certain abilities, which we can discover throughout the story, which I'll talk about later. First of all, once we meet Sam B, he tells us that it is better not to get involved with the government to seek answers regarding immunity, since, as I had told you before, he was present at the events of the first outbreak, along with other survivors, and obviously knew that these authorities were not to be trusted. Despite the warnings, we decide to seek out the authorities and someone who can investigate us to create a cure. Dr. Reed is our contact, and in the story of Dead Island 2, we must progress among the dead to eventually meet with him. As we progress, we can see that this immunity grants us certain abilities, many very similar to those exhibited by the infected. In LA, there are various types of infected with diverse variants and abilities, which we can also use ourselves, such as super strength, acids, supersonic screams, among a few others. All these abilities are present in our body, ready to be used as long as we maintain our sanity and consciousness, or at least that would be the case initially, from what we know. Later on, we can unlock a type of rage, with which we become very aggressive and can massacre hordes of zombies with our own hands. All of this, as I mentioned before, due to our immunity. However, we wouldn't be the only ones with these abilities and resistance to the zombie virus, as there would be other people, whom we can get to know closer to the end of the game, known as the Newmen. They also have these abilities, and after a key moment where we lose control, Lola, one of the Newmen, decides to tell us the truth about all this. The thing is that she and Reed were working together before the outbreak. Many years ago, Dr. Reed discovered a certain genetic phenomenon within human DNA, which was present in the majority, and which had a set date in the year 2160, so to speak, where upon reaching it, it would cause the organism of individuals to be destroyed, turning all these people into a connected, unicellular organism. These new zombies would try to spread the virus by biting other humans. Reed was very involved in the research of this genetic phenomenon, and it was not until the Dead Island 1 virus started that we could see this genetic alteration present in humans. This part is very interesting, because this countdown I mentioned before, which was present in all organisms with a programmed date for 2160, was instantly activated due to cannibalism, causing chaos and the emergence of the zombie outbreak before the predefined date. The government decided to create a biological weapon known as the HK pathogen, but later, this research would be abandoned. Years later, Dr. Reed, together with the CDC, began investigating these phenomena, thus creating the HK1 virus in order to stop the infection. These experiments were carried out on several people. The results did not seem promising, and to make matters worse, they ended up creating virus variants. Reed, desperate for not finding answers, decided to release the virus in LA with the intention of finding a cure, but causing chaos and unimaginable deaths within the city. The government managed to enclose the virus and caused isolation in the city, thus preventing the virus from spreading worldwide, something we already knew before. Returning to what I told you about people immune to the virus, the Newman would be a hybrid between human and zombie, with certain physical abilities, which we can see in other variants. As a curious fact, the Newmans seem to be connected, somewhat like a hive mind, this according to what Lola tells us, and by some strange graffiti which we can find later in some sewers. Lola proposed that we join her, telling us that these hybrids between humans and zombies would be the future and the next step of humanity. However, all this does not seem to convince our protagonist. Later, in a secret laboratory within a clinic, we discover all of Reed's truth, where he reveals to us that it was he who released the virus, condemning millions of people, but with the intention of saving the whole world, since sooner or later, and thanks to the genetic phenomenon that all humans had, the virus would condemn everyone. However, the major revelation comes when Reed tells us that Tisha, his daughter, is the one who has the cure for the virus, having achieved this by experimenting on her since she was a baby. The cure would finally be found by mixing our immune blood with Tisha's, discovering at last a solution for all this disaster. At the end of the game, Tisha escapes, and the fate of humanity would depend on us, having to search for Reed's daughter, who had the cure in her blood. All this raises several questions at the end of the game, the biggest one being why humans were destined to become these carnivorous beasts, and who would be behind all this. The ending leaves many things open, such as what the Newmen are planning, and what the final outcome would be for humanity after knowing all this. However, that will be a story for another video. I hope you liked this explanation of the Dead Island virus throughout its games. Remember to let me know what you think about all this on the comments, as well as leave a like and subscribe to support the channel. I hope to see you in the next one.